Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. It's at 6:31. Thank you, Terry. The school committee may seek to convene open session and recess to executive session for discussion and or action regarding those items of business exempt from open meetings under Rhode Island General Law 4246-4 and A, discussion action, personnel job performance administrator, exempt employee contract template. Rhode Island General Law 4246-5A1. Individuals have been notified, including their rights to have any discussion held in open session.
I'll make a motion to recess to executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
It's a low place down there. Yeah. So they were total empty. So I'll just. And so. Okay. I don't have to worry. Of your birth family. But of course, I was a redhead before I became. What is? What is? Not a farm bank, there's something. Oh. What is this? It's been- Oh, right. He's not here. Today. No, it's it. But we could say, yeah, we'll make sure to give it. You made me? Thank you. Really strong. Thank you.
Good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order at 7:04. We're going to start with our roll call. Stuart Landers,
Here.
Kate Massonotti,
Here.
Paula Whitford, Michelle Boyd.
Michelle Brusso.
I'm sorry, Michelle Bruce. James DeCivo
Here.
and myself, Carol Vetters here. Brad Shear is unfortunately not here tonight. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Make a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. There were no votes taken in executive session. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Perdaza to talk about the student recognitions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the committee would meet me in front, we have a plethora of student recognitions this evening. Okay, good evening. I'll ask that you, when your name is called, if you want to come right on up. Our first student recognition this evening is Maribel Collins here. Maribel is, oh. All right. Okay, we're going to say good things about Maribel, but that she made happen. That both Principal McGuire and Miss Terrell have said Maribel is a leader in second grade. She, I can't believe this one, has an upbeat attitude and a true growth mindset. Maribel is unafraid of hard work and truly gives her best effort every day. Miss Tyrell is so proud of the growth that she is making because of her effort and attitude. A round of applause for Maribel Hall. Is Ella Cohn with us? Ella, oh. Here she is. Okay, Ella, want to stand here, say good things about you, and then you can go around and shake some hands. So Principal McGuire and Mrs. Dialmo have put Ella for her leadership. And they say Ella is a shining example of a first grader with an insatiable curiosity and love for learning. Each day, Ella comes to school eager to learn and motivated to do her very best. Ella actively participates in class activities and shows a genuine interest in learning new information. Ella completes neat and organized work every day. She completes her reading and math and homework every night. Ella always sets a good example for her peers. She is kind to everyone and offers to lend a helping hand to both teachers and friends. Ella persevered through a challenge this year and has shown so much growth through her experience. A round of applause for Ella. Thank you, Ella. Another round of applause. Okay, and now for some Peacedale recognitions is Andrew Statch here. Andrew. From Principal Rapport. Andrew is here because of academic performance. A high-level academic performer, Andrew consistently follows all PBIS expectations and is a focused learner who strives to be at the top of his class at all times. He can be best described in 3 words: diligent, smart, and driven. A round of applause for Andrew. Lucia Hubbard. Lucia Hubbard. Principal Rapport has to say about Lucia. She is a role model for her peers in regards to her effort and growth, while already being proficient. She is a helper of other students and is compassionate, caring, and exemplifies all of Peacedale's school expectations every single day. A round of applause for Lucia Hubbard and leadership. Olivia Daly. There she is. Principal Rapport says of Olivia, leading, and is also here for leadership, leading the reduce, reuse, recycle charge in the cafeteria. Olivia spends lots of her lunch helping her peers reduce food waste, collects trays to reduce the trash bags, and always reminds her principal to announce reminders to all students to follow her 3R plan. What's the 3R? Reduce, reuse, recycle. and she has self-initiated this leadership role at Peacedale. And because of it, Peacedale is better off. Congratulations. Is Kennedy Morelli here? Kennedy is here and being brought forward to represent West Kingston Elementary and has been brought forward by Dr. Borden. Dr. Borden is recognizing Kennedy for community service. Kennedy has been working with her parent to make E-Strong bracelets to raise awareness and support a classmate who is struggling with a serious illness. Kennedy has made bracelets for each and every one of the staff and faculty at West Kingston Elementary. Thank you, and thank you for your service to your school and to your friends. We appreciate it. Is Levi Knowlton? And Levi is here. Congratulations. So Levi is here representing the awards at South Kingstown High School. And it is also a Projo Student of the Week recipient. He is a senior. He is here because of his leadership. As a senior with remarkable academic track record, Levi excels in both mathematics and computer science, currently demonstrating outstanding achievement in AP Calculus AB. His academic performance is a testament to his dedication and passion for his studies. Levi's commitment to academic excellence extends beyond his own studies, as last year Levi was offered an after-school peer tutoring several times a week. He provided support to students in need of assistance with their math courses. Levi's abilities to remain calm, cool, and collected under pressure makes him not only a great student, but also an excellent collaborator and peer. Outside of class, Levi is a key member of the math team, which competes quarterly against other schools. His intellectual curiosity, thoughtfulness, and problem-solving skills, as well as his passion for geometry, makes him a standout contributor to the team's success. And additionally, last but not least, Levi is the concert master for the school's orchestra. He excels in all aspects, as you've heard, of life here at South Kingstown High School. Congratulations. And is Ben White? Yeah. No? Ben White is not here, so we will see if we can we'll push him to another month's agenda. So at this time, it's my pleasure to ask up to the podium Principal McNeese to recognize some of the next awards and acknowledgements. Principal McNeese.
Thank you very much for having us here tonight. We really appreciate that. So we have two different groups of musicians that we are going to acknowledge tonight. And it's with great pleasure that I'm going to introduce two of our music educators first. And then we will call up the all-state musicians and do certificates. And then we will move on to Shebop. So I am really excited that we are acknowledging our all-state musicians in chorus, orchestra, and band. And their talent and hard work and dedication is unbelievable. And I'd like to introduce our orchestra and chorus teacher, Ms. Vitello, and our 7/8 band director, Mr. Drew, to do a couple introductions, and then we'll call the students up and then we'll read their names and present them with a very nice certificate. But Ms. Vitello, would you like to say a few words before we bring the kids up? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. The journey that these students have been on to become recognized as a Rhode Island All-State musician, for most of them started last summer or even, spring of 2024. They prepared a long and difficult solo that they had to perform and a number of scales and prepare for sight reading that they would have to do in the audition room. And their first achievement in this process was actually arriving at the audition room prepared to complete that audition, which is a great challenge in and of itself. And to then earn their place in the all-state groups and then participate in the festival, which was held a few weeks back at Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Providence, is just something that's truly special that I'm sure each of these students will remember for the rest of their lives. And it's something that we as a community in South Kingstown can be immensely proud of and immensely proud of the students themselves. So if we can just give them a round of applause before we read the names.
If the All-State musicians would like to come up and stand next to Ms. Vitello, then once you're up here, we're going to read your name and hand you your certificates. I know not all of the All-State musicians were able to make it here tonight, but if you are one of the All-State musicians from Broad Rock being honored and you're here tonight, please come on up. And Ms. Vitello and Mr. Drew, you'll help me with the certificates for All-State? Okay. I'm going to read, it's such a short list for All-State. You guys are on TV, so. No, they're going to get their certificate and then shake hands. Okay, so I'm going to read all the names even if they are not here. Okay, so congratulations, All-State Course Junior Division, Emma Benson, Emma Benson, Zoe Sales, and Aubrey Willard. Acknowledging students for All-State Course Elementary Division, congratulations to Joey Brown, Lulu Donito, Sophia Misa, Vivian Mooney, and Abigail Martinez. We have one student we're recognizing tonight for All-State Orchestra. Congratulations to Emma Palm. And there are 3 students who earned All-State Band honors. Congratulations to Jamison Bell. Congratulations to Renee Tamayo. And congratulations to Sadie Van Buskirk. Students, if you would like to shake the administration and the school committee members' hands on the way to your seat, that would be great. One more final round of applause. And during that transition time, can the Shebop musicians please come up? And Miss Collins, please come up. All of the Shebop musicians from Broad Rock and South Kingstown High School who are here tonight. Yes. We have quite a wonderful crew here tonight. I'm going to turn things over immediately to Miss Collins. I asked her to be brief and then we'll recognize the kids and move on. So Miss Collins, I'd love for you to do the Shebop introduction and then we'll do certificates for the kids.
Thank you. Mrs. McNeese asked me to speak briefly on the purpose of our first ever Shebop Junior event. So here goes. I perform with a 16-piece big band called the She Bop Swing Orchestra. We're an all-female and female-identifying jazz band committed to fostering equity, empowerment, and diversity within the jazz community. We aim to provide equal opportunities for women to contribute in jazz while creating a more inclusive and vibrant jazz community for all. Part of our mission is to inspire and empower future generations of female jazz musicians, breaking down barriers and working towards a more equitable and diverse jazz landscape. We strive to support and raise up their work and their music and foster a harmonious, inclusive, and vibrant musical community. Meanwhile, Dr. Emmett Goods works as the director of URI Jazz Studies program on a very similar goal. Every March, he runs a Voices in Jazz program that brings in a female jazz composer in residence who works with URI's jazz big band. So there's no plot twist here, just the convergence of two organizations with a wonderfully congruent goal. When I reached out to the oodles of South Kingstown's female jazz musicians, they said yes to the opportunity and gave many after-school rehearsal hours to the cause. To be sure, they are good at many things, but the fact that they carved out time for Shebop Jr. inspires me. Dr. Goods wrote a grant to extend the stay of this year's artist, a phenomenal New York City jazz trombonist named Gina Benalcazar Lopez, so that she could work with our students as well. URI's Gender and Women's Studies Department and Africana Studies Department both said yes to his grant request. So what began as a what-if endeavor went so very well that it looks as though it will be our first annual Shebop Junior Jazz Day at URI. Our gratitude runs deep to Michelle Brousseau for attending and spreading the good word, to Dr. Goods for his incredible support, to members of the URI Jazz Band who are on hand all day to assist with whatever we needed, to the amplified voice professor, Atla de Champlain, whose parents donated a catered lunch for everyone. But most of all, we are grateful to whom we honor tonight, the Shebop Junior charter members who were the first ones to go for it. They carved a path that will be followed for many years to come, and they represented SK extraordinarily well at a day full of music making and community building with 3 other school districts. They are the true catalysts for lasting change.
All right, so I will ask people to hold their applause, and then we will give a thunderous round of applause at the end. And we're going to acknowledge there's a few people who couldn't make it tonight, and this is a combination of Broad Rock and South Kingstown High School, and I love it. So we'll hold the applause to the end, but congratulations for the flute, Deandra Perry Allen. For the alto saxophone, congratulations, Delaney Dernberger. Do you say we're going to do a picture after? Stay. Thank you very much. I need a picture. Thank you. Okay, so Delaney Dernberger for alto saxophone, along on the alto saxophone with Allie Englander and Mia Rhodes. We have on the, I have about 15 to do, then we'll go. Thank you. All right, the tenor saxophone, congratulations to Sloan O'Brien and Eva Vieira. On the baritone saxophone, congratulations to Madison Lay and to Nora Haig. On the trumpet from South Kingstown High School, congratulations to Maggie Fusco and also Alba Grandich. On the trumpet from Broad Rock, Sophie Kwasmanen, Elena Perry, and Izzy Clausen. On the trombone from South Kingstown High School, congratulations Harper Rodman. And on the trombone from Broad Rock, congratulations Beatrix Dahl, Alina Rattano, and from South Kingstown High School, Sarah Clark. On the piano, congratulations to Emily Letourneau from Broad Rock. And one final congratulation for the bass, Coco Cordelia Barnett. And let's please give everyone a big round of applause. Thank you very much.
And a round of applause for all of our award recipients here this evening. And that concludes this evening's recognitions. While we certainly do not want to discourage public participation in a democracy, if you weren't planning on attending the rest of the school meeting, now would be a nice time. Feel free to exit at this time. And again, thank you so much for all that you do for South Kingstown Public Schools.
All right. Next, we have comments from the community. We ask those who come to the podium to please state your name and please, we allow 3 minutes for comment. And unfortunately, we're not, it's not a time for a dialogue, so we can't respond, but we do welcome your comments. Thank you.
Brittany Apuzzo.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Brittany Apuzzo. My husband Randy and I homeschool our daughter. This is our first official year homeschooling as she is in kindergarten. From the beginning, we have followed Rhode Island law, submitting our letter of intent and receiving a letter of approval without issue. We appreciated how simple, smooth, and supportive this process was with the South Kingstown School District. It made us feel that South Kingstown is a homeschool-friendly district that respects the rights and choices of families. However, after completing this process, we began receiving additional requests for information that is not required by Rhode Island law. We did not submit these forms as they were not a legal requirement. Following this, we experienced multiple unexpected visits from a truancy officer, despite having met all legal obligations. On the advice of our homeschool advocate, we emailed to clarify our South Kingstown residency. That email was received and acknowledged, and no further action was requested. We trust and support the efforts of Rhode Island's homeschool advocates in ensuring that families can continue to educate their children lawfully and without unnecessary interference. We ask that homeschooling, our right to homeschool, remain a choice rooted in parental autonomy Please consider this with your policy decisions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom DeLomas.
Hello, thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm Tom DeLomas. I'm a resident of Wakefield, and together with my wife, we homeschool our children. It's been a blessing to homeschool our children and to see how that educational environment is right for them and has led to wonderful explorations and developments and intellectual growth. I'm here because I'm concerned about some of the policy changes proposed in the homeschooling policy. I'm concerned that other children may not get timely access to the same benefits of homeschooling that my children have. And the main concern with the homeschooling policy of mine is that it would prevent the beginning of home instruction until the approval process has been completed, whereas the current policy allows home instruction to begin as soon as the request is made. The approval process is an administrative process and in part, and as such can be subject to various delays. You know, the school district has a lot of work to do and sometimes processes get delayed. I think we all can understand that. And unfortunately, under the new policy, a delay in the administrative side of things would result in a delay in the student having access to the educational environment that is best for that individual. I understand it's the opinion of some or perhaps the whole committee that these policy changes are required by the State Department of Education and that it's not something that you have autonomy over. You know, if that is indeed the case, then I would ask that you work with us to help the State Department of Education understand that these policy changes can cause issues, and to work with us to help them realize the difficulty this could cause families and students in our district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doral Beasley.
Hello, so I haven't been here for about a month. I'm sure you guys missed me. Can I clear a room or what though when I show up? They just leave in droves. All right, so the thing that the sheet that you got, you've seen it before, but this is an updated version. So when high schools, when enrollment in a high school begins to drop below 400, it starts to lose its cohesiveness. Because if you don't have, as an enrollment drops, things happen, like you don't have enough students to offer the same courses that you had before. And it really affects extracurricular activities like especially sports, you may not have enough students in your school anymore to have anything but a varsity team. So Narragansett this year is at 377. 260 of those students are from the town of Narragansett. 70% of the students, 70% of the other students that make up the 377 are from Jamestown and South Kingstown. Now, that demographic chart there that shows the our two high schools. If you go out 10 years, so you just got a 10-year enrollment projection from NESDEC, and so did Narragansett. So when you go out 10 years, see the total there for the two towns, 636. Now we're going to build, this high school looks like it's going to be 153,000 square feet. So that little chart there in the upper right now shows you how many students that high school can hold. If you do it by the non-CT and CTE numbers, which is how it was calculated, it would be 720. Or if you use the ride has a table where it doesn't differentiate between CT and non-CT. So just the total volume of the school would hold 777 students. All right, so when you go out 10 years and you see the number for South Kingstown, 436. It's a big difference, okay? It's a huge difference. So here's the thing. Narragansett, it's not for the town of Narragansett, it's not if, it's when they're going to have to regionalize. In fact, I'm surprised that RIDE hasn't already informed our two communities to consider it. So at the point when Narragansett is forced to do this, what's going to happen? Well, one of two things, I believe. The first thing they could do is they could become like Jamestown and just say, we're not going to have high school anymore. We'll just have a middle school and an elementary school. We'll let our students go wherever they want. Because we're so close, next to Narragansett, the likelihood is that, a significant amount of those students live in Narragansett will decide to come to South Kingstown. But the other option would be to regionalize. So what two districts would they regionalize with? South Kingston or North Kingstown? North Kingstown today, their enrollment's also dropping, but they have the facility, they have the space in their high school and in their other facilities to easily absorb Narragansett's enrollment. So when you regionalize with another district, you get a couple of things. The first thing you get is you get a higher amount of state aid is afforded to a regionalized district. And the other thing is if you decide at some point that you're going to build another school, instead of getting 35% reimbursement from the state of Rhode Island, you get 65%. So
I just remind you, we've gone a little bit over the 3 minutes.
I know. So here's the thing. I know the thing in the paper was a little bit weird. Okay. But when you look at those numbers on that sheet there, what it doesn't show you is those numbers for Narragansett, those numbers include those numbers are built to include the students that are out of district. So if you took the out of district students out of Narragansett's numbers, within 3 years of our high school opening up, it's possible that the two districts could regionalize at the high school. The thing is, if they decide to go with North Kingstown, we're in real trouble.
Thank you, Doral. Would anybody else like to speak this evening? All right, with that, we'll close public comment. That will bring us to the consent agenda. I'll turn that over to the superintendent.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And
All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Next is the superintendent report. Now I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Madam Chair, members of the school committee, members of the public. In my report this evening, I will focus in on, again, the standard personnel for informational purposes. Then I want to give a strategic planning update, as well as have a great update to give in terms of our community participation in survey works. So in our next slide, please. So it's nice to see while we have some people on this personnel action form, not too many, which is great this time of year. However, next slide. What's also great to see this year is I'm pleased to bring before you for informational purposes those coaches that will make up our spring coaches as put forward to me by Athletic Director Lynch. Next slide, please. We wish both our coaches, assistants, head coaches, as well as assistants, best of luck in this spring season. May the warm weather come quickly for you. In terms of the strategic planning update, we have reconvened we have not convened the body, but we have reconstituted the strategic planning subcommittee. And I have spoke with Ms. Rousseau as well as Mr. Shear, the school committee representatives, about a general course or phases of strategic planning. Strategic planning is a little bit different than it was in years past, because while people were supposed to do strategic plans, they had a lot of different leeway to go through. With the Education Accountability Act, strategic plans for both districts and school improvement teams have become essential and are required by, again, the Education Accountabilities Act. And so as we go into strategic planning, and we look to not only take a look at what is required, but also what our community needs and what our community wants. And so there's an interesting tension here. And so what we're thinking of is taking our strategic planning and putting into phases. Because again, there are lots of things that, even if required, we have and have already done. And so we can't really follow the RIDE blueprint exactly. So that's why we want to make sure we're utilizing existing resources and reports to serve as the plan's needs assessment. For example, this community did significant outreach through NESDEC last year in terms of filling the superintendency, and where that outreach talked about core values, about aspirations, about qualities, not only of the superintendent, but what people were looking for in the district. Additionally, the high school here has their accreditation report that talks about not only curriculum, but culture and needs. And we have an upcoming equity audit that obviously will definitely serve in terms of educational attainment as well as culture throughout the district. So we have going through and doing a needs assessment per the RIDE guidelines it is unnecessary. And so we are able to kind of pick and choose a little bit or use the resources that we have. So in phase one, we see the subcommittee as acting as an overarching steering committee to help guide the work. Again, the first one being to take those resources and reports and to come up and do an analysis or a crosswalk, if you will, of the needs of the district. But then we also need to take a look at the district's mission, vision, and core values, which really need to be the foundation if we want our students, educators, communities to have our strategic plan be more than just a RIDE document or to be more than just a book on the shelf. They need to be able to see themselves both in all three components of the mission, the vision, and the core values. That's why my April outreach this month will go not only to educators, families, and caregivers, but we'll also focus in later on in the month in terms of students to make sure that we are getting their input as we look to revise the mission and the vision. And then the last task in terms of phase one of the strategic planning committee, that we need to determine that structure. We need to determine, what we have in place and what can be done in terms of requirements that we can take care of at the building and administrative level, but yet some other priorities and some other aspects of strategic planning that need to go before this committee and that need greater community input or need, to span not a grade level, but the pre-K through 12 continuum. So again, in phase one, we're going to look to do our needs assessment and find commonalities to revise, if necessary, the mission, vision, and core values, as well as determine a structure. Next slide, please. So with the RIDE model requirements, everything that is starred here is, by their guidance, required and must be present. And as you can see, that diagram on the other side is also promulgated by RIDE. But not every single thing that's required is even in their theory of action or in their planning process. So again, these are things that at the building level, at the district level, many of them are things that we're doing already. We have to do, whether it be because of school improvement plans or whether it because is for federal grants coming out of the Office of Teaching and Learning or out of student services for IDEA. So doing needs assessments, setting up measurable goals, kicking off initiatives and basing those off of evidence. Those are things that ultimately in the day-to-day operations we're doing already. So we could do the RIDE model and go all the way through. However, one would argue that if you continue to go around and do the same process, that oftentimes you're going to get the same results. And that can be a good and a bad thing. But what we'd also like to do is say, okay, well, what are some of those things that the RIDE needs assessment or the RIDE model not only requires, but that a similar process is guaranteed to come up with? And to then, if we know that there's going to be a predictability about metrics or about key performance indicators that high-performing districts have in their strategic plans, rather than engaging the community on something that we know they're going to produce, why don't we put that into our plan from the get-go? Why don't we put those 5 to 7 aspects into our plan, knowing that that process, predictability, from a predictability standpoint, is already going to be there? And we could then focus in onto things that make South Kingstown and South Kingstown Public Schools unique. Next slide, please. And this is where, for me, at least, the excitement in terms of those phase one, or I wanted to give the committee a sample of some of the options other than the RIDE model that we could explore, that the subcommittee will explore. and potentially select, or might choose to select a hybrid and choose ultimately a strategic plan that will be right for South Kingstown. So one example would be what they call a rolling horizon strategic plan. So instead, essentially here, instead of a 3 or 5 year plan, essentially there's an 18-month plan that is iterated or that updates are given quarterly. The idea being that in order to pivot with the times or as circumstances, emerging needs, demographics, funding changes, that you're not tied into that you're just getting started down a long-term journey and then realize, uh-oh, we need to start over or go back and reallocate resources because, well, we're already too far into the plan. Next slide, please. Another would be a scenario-based contingent plan. This is a plan where you create a optimistic baseline and challenging. So ultimately, you don't create one strategic plan, you create 3. The thinking being that this allows you to pivot as circumstances or your current reality changes. And the benefits being that there are no surprises to the community. That you know that if something happens in terms of changing to funding, that there's a playbook for that. There's strategies that your administrators, teachers, and community can rely on, and that they know is approved. So again, I shouldn't go all worst case scenario, but again, if things are going very well, so if all of a sudden state aid or federal aid increased, that you would have a plan approved ahead of time and you can implement that. Again, pros and cons in each one of these models. Obviously, the intensity that it takes to create not 1, but 3 strategic plans, given time as well as need. Again, pros and cons, but again, something we wanted to investigate. Next slide, please. In the opposite of rolling horizon strategic plan, we have the reverse timeline strategic plan, where participants imagine 10 years, 5-10 years down the road and set really ambitious goals, and then backwards design how to get there and set realistic milestones in order to get there. With the benefits of this one being there are no surprises. You're able to put key priorities up. You're able to celebrate incremental success along that timeline. Again, really those multi-year foundations, so that we know that if something from a finance perspective is necessary 5 to 10 years out, we can start planning for that now, as well as budgeting for implementation and then continuing on with it. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, perhaps not surprisingly, my favorite, the moonshot. Moonshot strategy with rapid experimentation. In this, the district would set ambitious or moonshot goals and then challenge conventional thinking. And then you encourage people within the organization to set up quasi experiments, if you will, in order to get to those goals. Again, while it balances, it gets everybody on board, and it might get people talking and excited. This would be the most difficult plan ultimately, depending on what those targets were to align with the RIDE requirements. So again, it's not that we are going to need to select just one, but we could look to these as well as other models will go before the strategic planning committee so that we can select not only what can work with RIDE, but again, we feel will resonate with our students, families, and educators as well. Before I move on, are there any questions or concerns?
Will the kind of the determination of what models and what type of strategic plan or plans, will that be solely hashed out at the strategic plan subcommittee level, or will there be guidance from the larger group, or will they kind of say, this is what we want to do and then run it by us?
Yep. So in terms of as as a steering committee and ultimately making sure that everything that that committee does would have the backing or would want the support of this committee. The thinking would be is that we would make recommendations, and then as we get to those milestones of each one, bring both before you our best thinking as well as the pros and cons that we know of in terms of the options that we've whittled it down to. So let's take, say, for example, these 4 were presented only, or that out of, let's say I presented 10, they whittled it down to these 4 with a hybrid. You know, with 4 going on, we'd still need to break it down and then say, okay, we've come to option 1 and option 2, or this hybrid that looks like this. Then it would be on an agenda item here to go before the school in a strategic planning subcommittee report. This is where we are. This is the discussion input from the committee here, and then go back to that work. What we'll also potentially take a look at doing is, it depends in terms of membership, or as if there's how quickly consensus can come on some of these. We also have the ability to break up potentially into teams where we could say on that committee, okay, is somebody, are people, some people have an affinity for plan selection where others might want to be wordsmithing and crafting mission and vision. And if we separate into working groups that way, we then can have people either who can meet on that meeting schedule as well as have the affinity. But either way, they would bring that work forward to the steering committee, hash it out, wordsmith to then present here before exiting or putting ultimately a gavel down as to the direction of, we're going to close out that chapter of phase 1, and here's the guidance that we would like you to move forward with.
So will the equity audit have anything to do with the outcome of the strategic plan? Because I feel like that is part of this strategic plan, or it needs to be.
Yes, absolutely. In every strategic plan or planning model, there has to be a needs assessment. And that ultimately is what our equity audit is. It is a needs assessment of the district longitude, whether it be both longitudinally as well as currently. And as such, will serve as the basis of the needs assessment in any strategic plan.
Do we know when we will receive that report? And I also want to know if the Sterling Committee will be going over that report to make recommendations for strategic planning.
So my hope is to have a final report either this week or next. And then upon getting that to committee members, to make that publicly available before, as soon as possible, hopefully by our next meeting. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. In a little bit of a celebration, next slide, please. I am pleased to report that since our last meeting, each school in the district has hit that 20% or more of family and caregiver participation in survey works. So again, while we kind of loosely were saying 10% is a good amount in terms of making sure that we can say that there's some statistically significant data there, again, trying to get to that 20%. So we are now at that, over that 20% target as a district. Some schools are over, some are right around, and we still have a week to go. So that will close actually on 3/31. Thank you, Mr. Seeger. And now the push is really to make sure that we are making sure that our students have had the opportunity, as well as our educators have had the opportunity to participate, and that their voice is equally represented. So the number in parentheses is just the number that was presented to you at the last meeting. And then the higher number is that as of yesterday. And so next slide with that. that concludes my report, and I'm happy to take on any questions or comments or concerns you may have.
Any questions? All right. Do I have a motion to accept the superintendent report?
The motion to accept the superintendent's report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, that brings us to school committee business. A, discussion action fundraiser. South Kingstown High School class of 2028, Five Guys. Welcome.
I am Christine Rathbun, and we're class advisors for the class of 2028. So they want to do a fundraiser with Five Guys, and what it is it'll happen on April 8th, between 4 and 8, and Five Guys will give them 25% of any sales they generate. So the class plans on putting posters out, blasting it out on social media. We're gonna give it to all the schools to share with them, the elementaries, middle, everything. And hopefully we can get a lot of money, so these guys can help fund their junior prom, senior trip, all sorts of stuff. They're a pretty ambitious group, have already done a few fundraisers, and they're very excited to start this one. Make sure you come out and eat.
I'll make a motion to approve the fundraising request for the class of 2028.
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions?
Just one comment. I know the Peacedale PTO did a Five Guys fundraiser, and I think your numbers might be low. It might get low.
Okay.
So
We like that. We like that.
I just want to say, I spoke with you before the meeting and all the things that you're doing to really generate the sales and get people in there. Personally, I'm not a burger guy, but you know, I'll certainly do my part to support that and ask people to go there. So best of luck to you. And I think it's great that Five Guys is willing as a community support to provide 25% of all the sales that day. So, well done.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
I just put it in my calendar, so if it's in my calendar, it'll happen.
Nice. We appreciate it. Thanks.
All those in favor?
aye.
Bye.
All right, motion passes. Good luck. All right, B, discussion action field trip, Broad Rock Middle School grade 7 to Mystic, Connecticut.
Oh, good evening. Thank you again for having me again and for putting this on the agenda for your consideration. I really appreciate it. So all of our grade 7 students, we are hoping to go to Mystic Seaport in June. So it'll be for the whole entire 7th grade. The teams will go on 2 different days because the museum can't accommodate us all at once because we're about 185 kids. So one team will go on Monday, June 2nd. One team will go on Wednesday, June 11th. And Mystic Seaport's only about 35 miles away, but it is over state lines, which is why I wanted to just make sure that you're okay with the trip. This particular trip is actually one of the recommended trips in the school committee packet to Mystic Seaport. Our social studies curriculum coordinator, Mrs. Hunter, did this experience quite a few years ago and then went back on her own in December and wanted to go through the museum and do the whaling boat tour herself to make sure that the kids would be excited to be relevant to the curriculum. It's just a day trip. So the teachers have received all the quotes from Ocean State Transit. They're going to be leaving at 9 in the morning, returning by about 2:45. And we picked days where we have a late bus available. So we're going to be a little bit past our dismissal time, but all students will be able to take the late bus home if they need that. So the trip is going to be, it's called the Seaport Sampler. So they will get admission to the museum. And then they will have a guided tour of the Charles W. Morgan whaling ship, a tour of a historic home, and an in-depth exploration of a trade. So the cost is about $45 a student. And that includes the museum admission. There's a separate fee for the additional tour that they're going to be doing. And then obviously the busing that we need. And so how we're going to pay for that is we do partner quite closely with our PTO. And so the PTO has budgeted at this point before their big 5K road race about $20 a student. And then we will be meeting with them after they have their big annual 5K road race. So that additional amount could go up. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be messaging families after we know what that donation from the PTO can be. And then we're going to be asking families if they are able to, make a contribution. Some families will make a contribution. There'll be an option to sponsor another student if they want to give a little bit of an additional amount. And then if we are short, we are going to do a grade 7 dance because that is a low cost item and it's a good revenue source because we're only paying for the SRO and the fire marshal. And then and we get to have a DJ who's one of our staff members who donates his time for free. So we're going to have a grade 7 dance regardless, and the student council would plan that, use those funds for student council activities. But if we are coming up a little short, we don't have to make the deposit to Mystic until the week before the trip. If we're a little short, then the May grade 7 dance, I'm confident that we'll be able to get whatever the balance is. So the teachers have done a nice job with the planning. They have all the quotes. They've done the cost estimates. We've been partnering with the PTO. And then once we get approval, then we'll do messaging to families. So if you have any questions for me.
I have a question, just a clarifying question. So the wording in this document that we have in front of us is that the teams will be requesting a $25 donation from families to help cover the cost of the trip. But it sounds like you have all these other kind of plans in place to either eliminate and or minimize that number. So I just want to clarify that only because
Yes, that's a great
Thank you.
question. I'm sorry if it was a little confusing. That would be the maximum ask if we had to ask today. But again, we kind of count on the Coyote 5K. The PTO is very committed to the funds that they raise. They really want to equally distribute among all 3 grade levels for field trips. That is their big that's their goal, is they want to support experiences. A lot of these kids, through COVID haven't had a really vibrant field trip in many, many years. So they're very committed to what can we do for an extension for the kids to have a good, experience for them.
Love that place, Mystic Seaport. So what's the total?
So the total is just around it's about $40. And so we're kind of budgeting $45 a student because we know that not every family is going to make a donation. They do not have to. We are committed to make sure that all students will go on this trip. So we package it together. We take, the regular buses that are needed for both. We take the minibus for students with disabilities that's needed. We kind of package the whole thing together. We look at the donations that come in. We work with the PTO. So that's it, the price point that we'll hit our mark if we're at like $45 a student.
I'm sorry, what's the total number? Like for all students, all people who are attending buses and all that?
Yep. That's a great question. I have it all in different spots. So I have bus quotes for the regular bus quote for the minibus, bus quote for the tour, bus quote for the museum. So I don't have the grand total, but we have about 185 students in grade 7, and the chaperones are free for the tour, but there is a fee for the museum. So we will, so I can get that number for you. I can total that, but.
Yeah, we can do 180 for 185.
That's the fastest way to just, to ballpark.
185.
Yeah.
Thank you.
back
That's-
to the-
So that's the best way to kind of holistically look at it. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a comment. I love Mystic. I love the Charleston Blue Morgan. If you've never been on it, it's really fascinating. And I was going to ask a question about the donation, but you answered it already. So my last question is, when is this 5K? I can't do 5Ks. I'm too old.
There's also a walk. There's a
Yeah,
1
yeah,
mile
right,
walk too,
right,
but
Right. Sometimes we can't walk from my car to my house. When is it?
it is the first Saturday in April, which I believe is April 5th, first Saturday in April, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they do the 1 mile walk run first, and then they do the 5K after that. And this is completely sponsored and owned by the PTO. So they have their electronic Cheddar Up payment through the PTO set up. And then they're also taking checks made out to BRMS PTO.
And you said 9 o'clock in the morning?
Yes,
Got it.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McNeese.
All
Would you like
right.
a motion?
I would.
I'll make a motion to approve the 7th grade trip to Mystic Seaport.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. McNeese. All right, so number C, discussion action, award of bid, fire alarm, fire extinguishers, sprinkler and suspension systems, inspection, testing, maintenance, and repairs.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So on behalf of our now former maintenance director, the great Brian Mahoney, I'm simply asking you to approve this contract here, this award to FSI Fire Systems.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kilpatrick?
It looks like it looks like there's a memo here is already approved by the town council. Is this a joint effort with town council? Exactly, sharing funds or to pay for this?
Not necessarily sharing funds, it's just they bid for the entire town and school. So we got the economies of scale there.
Okay.
essentially. So they're allowing us to piggyback on their contract.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Got it.
The motion to approve the bid for the fire suppression contract.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stay put.
You got another one?
Next.
All right. All right, so brings us to D, discussion action fiscal year 2026 budget update.
Good evening again. So, as you are aware, the town adopted the budget on a preliminary basis on March 17th. And so just in summary, we had asked them for $809,000 roughly. 500,000 of that we asked for on the maintenance of effort side, on the revenue side, and we asked them to take back about $309,000 in expenses. So the town agreed to take back the tax software and the computer services or the IT support for a total of about $71,000. We are going to retain the field maintenance costs, and that amount is actually going to be $101,000, not $96,000. The SRO expense at $73,000 and the crossing guards at $67,000 for a total of about $242,000. So that's on the expenditure side. On the revenue side, although they did not grant our request for the additional $500,000, they did adopt a measure to. Am I still here? Okay. It's flashing at me, Doug. I'm not sure what that means. They did agree to give us $600,000 or approximately $600,000 from what is called the Health Management Fund from when the town and schools were part of the East Bay Health Initiative. Or I can't remember what that was called exactly. The actual amount as of today, I spoke with the town finance director, is $608,000. And it's currently earning interest. So the final amount that we received from that fund maybe, an additional 2,000 or so on top of that 608, so call it 610 potentially. The town finance director is in conversations with RIDE to make sure that all parties understand that this will not increase the maintenance of effort. This is a separate fund. These are monies already designated for school and town expenses that simply can be transferred in, but we're just trying to get coverage from RIDE essentially. So there's no confusion there. So of the 809,000 that we requested, we'll be receiving about $671,000. So there is a remaining shortfall that, based on some changes that I'm expecting, we'll have a plan to fund that deficit. So a couple current developments. We received our final health and dental rates from the trust. So health insurance and premiums will be increasing at 8.74%, originally budgeted at 8%. Dental at 6.4%. So that was less than what we budgeted for. Also waiting to hear back from the trust on our property and casualty and workers' compensation premium updates. That may be in our favor. We also have 2 budget hearings in April. And we have our final state aid to look forward to in June when the General Assembly adopts their budget. So those are the things outstanding at this point. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or any concerns you want to communicate.
So do you anticipate us having to take anything out of fund balance for operating funds next year?
As of sure. Check. There we go. Hold on. As of this moment, yes, but I don't think it will be as significant as we originally anticipated.
So,
Go ahead.
so sorry, you want to go? There's a hum and it distracts me. Like, I wonder where my daughter gets ADHD from, but, I think that it was a wonderful meeting to be part of. I was there, a handful of us were there. It was wonderful to be there, because it was the first time in many years that our town councilors showed any sign of looking to work together and find creative ways to help. And I think it's great, and I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. However, because it isn't part of the maintenance of effort and it is a one-time, we're still going to have a problem in the next go round. So I want to make sure people understand that. And yes, it did not increase our property tax transfer for one more year. Yay, but also we're going to have to figure stuff out still going forward. The question I do have is, in part of the conversation, it was stated that the $600,000 needed to be used because it was there for health insurance benefits, that when it is moved, if it is moved, it has to be used in that same capacity. So my understanding would be that's what we would use to cover our current projection. And then that would free up the funds to pay for other things. I'm assuming we can't just take this and use it wherever.
Exactly right. So it will almost completely offset the budgeted amount that I have for retiree healthcare next year. That's how that will work. It won't allow us to do anything additional. Great question. Yep.
A couple of things, Mr. Kilpatrick. What did you say the increase was on? I told you I'm slow tonight. I'm exhausted. I can't remember when I slept or ate last. Well, what's the percent on the dental?
That came in at 6.4%. We budgeted 8%.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So slightly higher for health, slightly less for dental.
And what are we waiting for? We're waiting for the trust numbers, and
We have to do our renewal for next year for our property and casualty premiums and our workers' compensation premiums.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So those applications are due April 11th, I think, somewhere around there, early April. So ours are submitted. So we just have to wait for underwriting to basically go through the whole process and give us our final renewal rates.
Okay.
But based on preliminary conversations, that may be favorable for us.
I also attended the council meeting on the evening that they adopted the budget. And, the way I understood the same way Kate did, that yes, that 600 plus a little bit, $1,000 will be made available to us. They seemed very sure that it would not add to the maintenance of effort. But also that it had to be used for the health coverage. What I think, this is my impression from their discussion. I was also pleased that it seemed like, it was like, let's talk to the school committee about this. I was like, oh, where did I come? But on the, I think it was $308,000 that we proposed, those expenses be taken over, by the town. It's, and I didn't get up and speak to this because I didn't think I could do as good a job as our superintendent. I don't, from the way they talked about it, I don't think they understood Mr. Pedrazza's main point on the SROs and the crossing guards, that we have no supervisory evaluation. We have no control over those employees, but we're paying them like they're our employees. So, that's just a comment. I don't know if, we can push that a little further. I think that piece is important.
We only pay for a portion of it, correct? We split it with them.
Yep, to be clear, we split the SROs 50-50 with the police department. Yep.
Split that 50-50, but we pay for the crossing guards.
Pay for the crossing guards. My understanding is that we pay 100%.
That's what I thought too.
That's what it looks
100%
like
on
in the
crossing
documents that
guards,
get sent to me.
I think that one probably is like for this season is probably out of the realm of negotiating, but maybe next time, because they don't only cross students, right? They're out there, they're for the safety of the entire community. They aren't just for the safety of our students. So it's definitely a talking point for next time round, maybe.
They crossed me once.
They
So
they cross everybody, right?
Yes.
They stop, they help with traffic if there's an issue. I mean, they do a wonderful job at keeping the
Yes.
community safe during really high traffic volume.
yes,
So, but I think it probably is but the SRO one, it's 50-50. They're with us, that they do other things for the school, for the police department. Like during the summer, they're still South Kingstown police officers, and on the weekends, it's still South Kingstown police officers. So they do more than just SRO duty. But to me, the 50-50 makes logical sense on that one. But yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Fair
Yeah,
points.
one of the, just to, piggyback on, the shared services. So they've taken away all but the crossing guard and that.
Yeah, the
SRO.
tax software and the computer services. Those are the two that they took back.
So. Okay, so we know that the crossing guard is 100%. We know that the SRO is 50%. What is the percentage of the other one? Because that was a question that kept coming to my mind.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I've never received an itemized list of, the hours worked or the field service necessarily. It's kind of an informal understanding. That's a legitimate question. I could certainly ask for a little bit more detail.
I mean, I just think with
That's a good point.
the bills, all of the bills that are in this community, that yes, we do use, but we also have other entities that use those bills as well. And I feel like it should be an equal percentage coming from everyone that uses pocket bags, school department, town, etc. like that.
Fair point. Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to clarify, we only are invoiced for the care and maintenance of 2 fields. So it's Hazard Field and Curtis Corner. Where the school is, where the, right?
All the athletic fields.
All the,
Yes.
they don't charge us for Old Mountain Field. So our invoice, my understanding at that meeting was, it's the Curtis Corner Fields and Hazard Field that we get invoiced for. Starting this summer, Hazard will be off the table because it will become a construction site, and so we won't have to pay for that. So it should be a lesser cost. And then I agree with the Curtis Corner athletic fields, like with all the entire, because our students use them during pockets of time, but the community can use them 100% of the time. Like I can take my dog down there and walk the track anytime I want, as long as there's not a gym class there. And, you know, so I agree with you, but I think they have it broken out. Steve Alfred, you know, people don't like to invoke his name very often, but he knew what he was doing. And it is only a percentage over if we don't pay for all the other fields. If that makes sense. Sorry, Steve.
But it is certainly worth asking for some more details. So points are well taken, for sure.
But Ms. Massinanti, they kept talking about Old Mountain Field and that evening and kept referring to it and saying that was a school field.
Yeah, they were saying we don't pay for it, but our students use it.
Oh.
So she was trying to say we were getting a deal.
Oh, we were getting a deal.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
All right, I think
Yeah.
Stuart has been wanting to say something.
No, glad to be here. So a couple of things. First, I want to echo what Kate was saying about the spirit of the conversation. I think you and Mr. Pedraza did a great job in terms of your presentation, and I thought the fact that they dug in to look for a way to help. It might be kicking it down the road a little bit, but the spirit was there and they got something done. The other part was that I just wanted to be, it's a clarifying thing and that Michelle, I think it's not a guarantee against I think that they were giving us the $600,000 in the event that it doesn't cause a tax event. So,
Right.
yeah, so
that
that
they-
was a pretty clear
They
from,
wanted to make
the
sure
president.
that
right. They wanted to make sure of that.
that it did not increase the maintenance of
Right.
effort because
And the last thing I just wanted to say was also, that was something that was brought up that we've had some discussion about was the transfer of the Wakefield School back to the town and how we kind of got our hands slapped a little bit on that one. But, you know, I know that we've had some discussion and we're looking to make that happen as soon as possible, which should also help with some of the costs.
So I just want to thank you for all of your hard work and everybody's on this. I too think that it was a very collaborative process with the town council. They were looking for ways to help us and we got 2 of the shared expenses. They agreed to take back. I think it's worth continuing those conversations because for different, we had our reasons for bringing them forward, and I think we need to continue those conversations. And I am glad that we have a way forward for 1 year. I made that point a week ago Monday that this solves a 1-year problem, but we're going to have an even bigger problem with the 27-year budget. So we want to keep that in mind. But with this solution, we don't have to make cuts that we were talking about to credit recovery, to the SMILE program and all those other things. So I just want to reassure people that were concerned that we would have to make those cuts, that we don't have to make them. So for this 1 year, we are in a much better spot. And, and it will preserve our fund balance going forward. So that's another good thing. So I'm glad that we've come to a really good spot for the 26 budget. All right. Anything else?
I would just add that in FY 26, that we're still going to wait on federal numbers. And we still do have some events to take on, that will be on next meeting's agenda. And as well as a deadline in terms of state law, in terms of if should, additional cuts or things that we're going to, that personnel must be taken care of by state law by June 1st. So just something to keep in the background as we turn on the news and things change, but there will be some action items more than likely at our next meeting related to FY 26, as well as that one deadline that should conditions radically change, that we would need to have additional conversations potentially moving forward. But we have obviously scheduled opportunities for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That brings us to number E, discussion action, review and adoption of school year 25-26 annual calendar.
So in your packets, last time we took a look at the calendar, was to have discussion regarding option 1 and option 2, which were about whether or not to have school in sessions during or for religious holidays, based on the committee's direction, and choosing what was deemed option 1 at the time, was to continue to have school in session, but yet to designate on the calendar that those religious holidays existed, and that there would be no evening activities scheduled as well. I did circle back around with our union representatives regarding the concern of because Good Friday does not fall during RIDE's recommended April vacation. Their stance has not changed. They believe that, based on the surveying, both done by the district office as well as independently for NEASC, that there are shared values there with what was expressed from the community, with wanting to do whatever was necessary to end the school year before Juneteenth. And that is the proposed calendar that is before you. The one other change would be that the first day of school that we talked about, which would be Tuesday, September 2nd, that we would take advantage of Rhode Island state law to have a transition day. So we are allowed for transition grades, which are those that are entering the school for the first time, to have essentially an orientation day and have that count as day 1 for all students. So students in the transition grades would have 180 school days, while technically those not would have 179. However, that would be acceptable. The change is that we would not be scheduling kindergarten screenings. So we would start kindergarten along with grades 6 and 9 only. We would do the screenings as we've been doing in the district traditionally, and then get everybody started. We would not use the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th for screening days, with then the first day of K on grade 5. That is allowed by regulation. So we, after discussion with the elementary principals, it was kind of, let's give this middle path, if you will, a shot. We do pick up some that as professional development time after speaking with Principal McNeese as well as Dr. McGare. There is some excitement actually around what the 2nd could look like, and how every department is going to lend a helping hand, if you will, or orienting those new grade levels to not only the systems and structures, but the culture of that building, and get those transition grades in before the full school arrives on the 3rd. Otherwise, this is fair. This is consistent with what was viewed in option 1.
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Okay, that will bring us to item F. Discussion action policy number 7710, homeschooling, second read. James?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is coming up for a second read. I know there were some comments we received that the community or the committee was not able to review all those comments ahead of the meeting last week. So we're going to bring this again for another discussion. My recommendation would probably be not to approve it as is at this moment, but if that's what the committee so desires, we could do so. But I would, given some of the comments we received, it might be worth bringing this back to the policy subcommittee. Our next meeting will be on April 7th to further discuss this. But I'm happy to take any comments, or if there is a desire to pass this policy tonight, that's also a possibility.
Yes, Kate?
So I agree with you. I don't, it should not be approved tonight. I think it should go back to policy and come back for a third read. I do have clarifying questions around, specifically, it strikes me as where the problem falls in this policy, that the folks who are impacted by the policy have clearly brought to our attention. And I happen to agree with them because I myself, as I've stated before, I've homeschooled one of my children in the past. So is it Rhode Island general law that they have to wait until our body approves it before they can begin home instruction? Or is that been added here based on our school district adding it?
I mean, I can take a stab on it, and Mr. Pollock can correct me if I'm wrong, but the law, as I was reading earlier today, is not clear on the timing of it. It does say it does require school committee approval, but it doesn't say anything about whether that should happen before or after. I think we're keying off a RIDE's interpretation of that, which is that it needs to go through school committee approval before it can start. So
but it doesn't explicitly say that. So I guess to me, the policy should read that parent submits their intention to homeschool. Yes, it needs to go through our process and needs to go through for approval of the whole 9 yards. But to me, once the parent submits their intention, that would be my preference of the verbiage, that once they are clearly state their intention, they should be able to start their homeschooling.
Can you word it that you get a grace period from the time you submit it to the time it's approved, where you're allowed to continue to homeschool your child during that process? I think there's language that we can find to say that still would meet RIDE's requirements.
I mean, it may be as simple as putting something in like those students would not be, once the letter of intent is received, those students would not be subject to the truancy things, but I see our lawyer Lansing, so.
Careful with that. I mean, homeschooling requires school committee approval. So requires school committee approval. Without the school committee approval, technically, and again, technically, it should not be homeless. I mean, that's technically. Now, I think I said this at the last meeting, and practically speaking, there's nothing to prevent the family from beginning to homeschool the child, especially if they convey that letter to the administration. Then it's the attendance officer is not going to be running out and making sure and dragging the kid back in or filing truancy petitions or anything like that within the 14, even 3 weeks, even a month, to be quite honest with you, time frame. So I think there's, and I could certainly work with the policy subcommittee on this. Perhaps you just don't put it in there and just leave it out instead of specifically stating it, because it's I mean, the law requires, it's there, but perhaps, that doesn't become school committee policy. I mean, there are ways that we can kind of get where I think you want to go. I'm just uncomfortable, and I'm uncomfortable also saying that it doesn't count because the law is the law. So you can't you know, the law 1619-1 says that you have to attend the school, and if you don't, I mean, it's pretty, you can't craft the policy with language that would kind of fly in the face of that.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you look at other districts' policies, they use the same words that we had where once you submit it, you can begin submit your intent, you can begin homeschooling. So if other policies in other districts are written like that, I don't understand why we can't have some similar language. I just want to,
And we
you know,
do in the current policy.
we want to protect the people that are being homeschooled. They want to feel like the policy, that they're following the policy.
That I'd like to make a motion that we send this policy back to the subcommittee for further discussion.
I want to wait for, hold on, because there's a second piece to this about enrollment that we haven't touched upon that I also think is important. Because this new policy says that they need to enroll their children into the school district and then take them out for homeschooling. And I just want to say, is there a way that they can get, I'm sure we need information, that's part of the enrollment process, but can it be a submitting of information with their intent to homeschool so that they don't have to actually enroll their children? I can see where they're saying it's very odd. I want you to enroll before you're allowed to homeschool. I think though that asking for information with your letter of intent is totally reasonable.
I'm just looking at the RIDE website right now, and that is not specifically spelled out in the general laws either. It's about the general laws require, again, school committee approval. So the school committee, and again, this is using a legalese word that has jurisdiction over the kids that are registered in its. So I'm just looking at this is a frequently asked question, right? So again, it is not in the general laws per se. It doesn't specifically say in the general laws that the student needs to be registered. However, again, with all of the supervisory, again, role that the school committee has or the school district has, like they have to, families have to, and I'm not attacking homeschooling by any stretch of the imagination, but RIDE says that with that approval language, it means that the student must first be registered and enrolled in the new district of residence prior to the approval of a homeschooling program. We've also, my firm has reached out to RIDE for another district that was having the very same questions that this district has. And the hearing officer that we reached out to echoed this answer. So that's just the information that we have regarding it.
So I think we're right. We definitely want this to go back to policy, but we're working with RIDE's interpretation of the law, not necessarily the written word of the law. This is what RIDE has. And again, like the community member that came up and spoke to that, if this is something that's RIDE's interpreting, maybe we need to work at that level to, because if it's not really in the law itself, then I'm not sure that their interpretation might be correct.
I mean, RIDE under the statute, RIDE is charged with interpreting school laws. So if there was again, RIDE's jurisdiction on all RIDE, that's in the statute.
Let me-
That RIDE is charged with interpreting school.
So
Hold on, just.
I'm on
like
I'm
I
sorry.
just have one more question though for Michael. Do we know how other districts handle it? Do they require enrollment before homeschooling?
At least, I mean, to my knowledge, again, at least one certainly does. It will not authorize homeschooling without it.
I'm sorry, Stuart.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
fine. Listen, it's an open discussion, and yes, I think we agree that we're ultimately going to take this back to the policy committee, which I'm on, and look forward to having that discussion. But I'm on the I'm on their site right now, and this opening statement kind of confuses me from RIDE based on what we're hearing in terms of what's law and what's not. But it says the Rhode Island Department of Education, RIDE, does not directly supervise at-home instruction. In Rhode Island, approval of at-home instruction occurs exclusively at the local school district level. So if we're the ones who make, what did I miss there? I look like I'm missing.
The instruction.
That's
So
just
RIDE-
the instruction.
Well, it's the instruction ultimately that each LEA has the responsibility to, so most of the whole, most if not all of the compulsory attendance laws, as well as what must be taught in the laws applies to schools, but then it's also talking about when you want to take your education and make it private. Essentially, if the way that I think about it is that when you approve a homeschooling, you are approving a private homeschool. You're essentially saying you're taking your education private, but it's a private education that, because it's falling under homeschool, falls to the jurisdiction or the oversight and reporting responsibilities of this body. As such, RIDE says you can create your policies and procedures that best suits the needs of the district. So do you want to have curriculum submitted? Do you not? Now that in many cases, as you've read and heard, isn't sometimes direct competition with some of the motivations behind why we're homeschooling and what we're homeschooling on and the autonomy that somebody has with that. So from that perspective is why I'm recommending that in this policy, because ultimately the district is approving a private schooling for students that normally without it would fall under our responsibilities unless they were enrolled in another approved already, not in our jurisdiction, private education, of which they would need to register or operate under the rules of that private piece. That ultimately, that's why they need to register with us, because while not under the, for lack of a better term, care, custody, control of the school department, because they're homeschooling, ultimately they are, because that approval and responsibility for oversight and making sure that those things are happening falls to us. And if it's not happening, it's on us to move it forward, whether it be with truancy or moving it to RIDE. Hence all of the appeals process that are set forth in the laws would be an appeal to RIDE. So an appeal of the committee's decision would go to RIDE, because ultimately public school students who are approved by a public school body to take or make their education private. So, sorry, I may have talked around in circles, but that's at least in terms of the framing that I have in making administrivia and our operations here as the school district, what I'm trying to do to protect the district.
Well, I mean, it makes sense if the family is going to be making use of any books that we're supplying, they can take. And from my experience, maybe this has changed and I haven't picked up on it, but from my experience, they can actually, there are certain electives that they can take advantage of. They could take advantage of our interscholastic sports, things of that nature. Then yeah, you should enroll in our district for that support and then homeschool from there. I would think, I mean, I have not heard feedback, and they're here, so they can totally correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard feedback otherwise. The feedback on masks that I heard was, when I give my letter of intent, I want to homeschool my kid.
There were a couple letters that specifically had problems with the enrollment process as well. And I think looking at how other districts word this in their policy might be a good start. I think that that policy needs to do a deep dive on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a much thornier issue than we had anticipated. And so I'm glad I'm happy for the robust conversation and the committed and passionate parents who have emailed us about this issue. And I think we'll bring it back to the policy subcommittee to take a deeper dive into this and see how we can bridge that gap between the needs of the school district to manage, ultimately be responsible for that versus the parents' rights to take their kid home and do homeschooling. So we'll have to do a little more work to bridge that gap, I think.
I do
I-
understand where Mr. Bassett's coming from when he talks about the enrollment process and us being responsible for that child. So the enrollment process should just be a very simple process. You're enrolling your child and you put in your intent to homeschool at the same time, right? Because what we don't want, and I think this is what he's trying to do, is protect the district as a whole as well, is we don't want to have people that we don't know for sure even live in the community coming in to say, here's my letter of intent, I'm going to homeschool my child. And we have no record at all of this child. So I totally get where he's coming from, and I think that protecting the student, the district, is what we should be doing as well. So yes, I'd like to take this policy back to the subcommittee and relook at it and potentially come up with a policy that's going to work for everybody, including our people, little people, students. So with that, if you don't mind, I'd like to make that motion to send the policy.
I was wondering if we need that motion.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, I'll second that motion then.
I just have a couple of questions. So our homeschooling families would potentially register their child, but their child never actually comes in our doors. And they have to make this application each year for homeschooling. They can't say, okay, and they should have some kind of proof of residency.
Yep.
The next year when they make the
Yes.
application for
The
homeschool.
application, the yearly application is legally required. That is not an element of.
Okay, I have another question. And I think Mr. Pollock is the one that's gonna answer this for me, I hope. And this is just wordsmithing. And I'm not sure if I'm thinking in the correct way, okay? At the top of the second page of this policy, it says the parent in boldface, the parents, guardians may begin home instruction. Okay, in my experience, the expression home instruction more refers to a youngster that is ill and our teachers go out to the house. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I homebound instruction,
So I just wonder if that should say begin homeschooling or.
that would be fine. I mean, I
Or
don't think.
begin,
it-
and it's just, it's the teacher in me coming back and she visits these meetings quite frequently. We always refer to home instruction as, the youngster breaks both arms and one leg and can't come to school, so your favorite teacher goes and teaches that youngster. That kind of thing. So it's just wordsmithing. It's not a big deal,
Yeah.
but
We
I
can
think
certainly
it
take a look
should
at that.
probably just say homeschooling. But I do like the
Yeah.
idea of all the comments that have come from the homeschooling community being included, being considered when the policy is rewritten. And since I am not on the policy subcommittee, Mr. Stevo, if you would just let our families know when that next meeting is, that I think that would be
Yeah, I
the
did.
right thing to do.
Of course, yeah, I mentioned that earlier, when introducing the policy, and it is going to be on April 7th. And it should be held in we're still holding them in the school administration building, but keep an eye out for, that venue may change between now and then, but that's where we have the meetings. It's usually 5:15 or 5:30. We'll have to see what works best for the group, but plan April 7th, around 5:15, 5:30.
Just to answer that question, I mean, it could say homeschooling, it could say home instruction. They're not specifically defined terms that the body is wedded to.
Okay. Yeah, I think, well, okay, we'll talk about that. Yep.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes.
The next one is also mine, the residency second read, policy number 8425. This is another second read. We did discuss this at our last meeting. Changes were, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Pedraza, but I believe the changes were mainly to remove the requirement for the notary to sign the proof of residency form. And if there are any other changes, please let us know.
I'll make a motion to approve policy 8425 for residency.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes.
Yeah, I'll keep going. Got the next one too. It says a new policy, no number on it yet. But this is therapy dogs in district schools. We did have some discussion on this in our last meeting. There was comments from Mr. Shear regarding the certification requirement. There was I think there's a request for a waiver, but I don't know if we added that in here to this one. No, anyway, so essentially the biggest change we made from the last reading was in 2A under training and certification. There was a specific certification that was designated, and it was mentioned that there would be equivalents. But we changed that verbiage to say the owner handler shall receive and submit a certification from a legitimate therapy dog certification agency as determined by the superintendent or his or her designee. So that is the substantive change we made. Everything else in the policy is the same as it was during the first read. I think we had a couple, maybe some formatting changes towards the end.
I would just at the very minimum recommend just the language, and it can be a very simple sentence that can add to a sentence, just requiring the handler, I think is the defined term here, to sign a document to accept the liability. Just because it's a policy, I think that they would have to say, I would feel much more comfortable with that at a minimum.
So we had talked about maybe adopting this with the provision that something would be written up to that effect, that they would accept, the owner handler would accept the liability. So I think that's what my thoughts were.
There's line 14. Maybe this was added from the last read about the owner handler of the therapy dog is solely responsible and liable for any damage to the property of SKSD or injury to personnel, students, or others caused by a therapy dog. So between that and the approval by the superintendent being required, or at least acceptance of the certificate, and I think does the building administrator have to approve it as well?
But getting their signature, that they've read it, they understand it, and they take responsibility is that extra step. You kind of need them to sign.
Okay.
You can, the school committee can put that in its policy, and I think that the handler would be charged, in putting forth the the application or what, however it's phrased in here. You can make that leap. I would just put it specifically in a separate, again, sentence that the handler will sign an appropriate waiver to, accepting liability for it. And then you have a separate contract, basically, which is much more strong. It's just much more strong. Stronger. Semantics.
It's getting late. Okay, so I guess then the motion would be to, if we want to accept this policy, to accept it with the revision to add a comment regarding a signed waiver for before, prior to approval or prior to bringing the dog into the. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to look at that maybe a little closer, and we can bring it back next time.
So you want to go for a third read? I was going to make a motion with the understanding that that waiver would be put in, but you would be more comfortable just bringing it back to policy and then resubmitting for a third read?
Back to policy, does it? I think it just needs to come back to us as a third
Yeah.
read
Well,
with the added
okay.
documentation that shows the waiver.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think across all our Ts and dot our Is, that probably makes the most sense to get in here, so you don't have to approve it with a revision. We can approve it as is, as written. Yeah, we'll bring it back for the next meeting. Yeah. So we'll it sounds like the will of the committee is to not approve that at this time. We'll bring it back for a third read on our next meeting, April 8th.
All right, thank you, James. All right, I'm going to take I and J together, the
Carol,
resolutions. So go.
Can I speak to them because there was a change from last night's town council meeting, if you don't mind. So I went to, I saw on the town council agenda for last night, and this is in regards to item I, discussion action resolution transportation. So Councilwoman Bergner had taken upon herself to craft a resolution to go basically to be brought forward to RIDE to include transportation in the funding formula. I totally fully support that. I don't care who puts it forward. Typically, it would come from this body and then move forward to the town council and then move forward to the reps. It doesn't matter to me what order it goes in, like as long as it moves forward. So what they agreed to do was they're going to run Ms. Bergner's resolution by their council. And then they are bringing it to their next town council meeting, which I believe is April 7th, because they meet one day before us. And then they'll review and hopefully approve it there and then send it to us. And then so the request is, it's still moving forward. It's just to table this specific to for our next meeting on April 8th, but waiting for the resolution to come from the town council versus coming from us. No. So, and then for item J, I'm just requesting that to be tabled totally until April 8th, not taking the town council into consideration, where it would be our resolution that we would want to put forward and then move forward to the town council from there. So I and J, I guess I'm making a motion to table I and J to the April 8th school committee meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. But I just want to say, Kate, I saw you there. I was watching from home, and it was great to see Deb working, so collaboratively again with us. So I thought that was a nice relationship to move forward with the town council. So, and thank you for working on these resolutions.
The one thing I did want to point out, and I wanted to say it at the town council meeting, but I didn't get the opportunity. One of the counselors also brought up another resolution, and you had passed along to me another resolution that is floating out there, and it's specific to transportation and funding, but it's very specific funding. Where what we're looking to do is bringing the transportation as a whole into the funding formula, not these specific items that the previous resolution was referring to. So it is a different resolution than what we're going to be putting forward. So.
And I think the governor's administration is looking to put together some task force to look at these issues specifically. So I hope that goes forward as well.
It's very specific. Yeah, we want to go forward. Right. Get quick.
All right, that brings us to item K, discussion school building committee update.
Okay, so we did meet on Thursday. I was a little late to the meeting, so Mr. Pedraza, if you can chime in if I missed something. I missed the first couple agenda items, so I can't really speak to those. One of the big items that we talked about was, and it was talked about again at the town council meeting last night, is when we are submitting the project to RIDE, we can submit, though it's one big project, we can submit it up in multiple phases. For example, if we decide to move forward with the demolition of Curtis Corner as a project or a phase of the project, once it's complete, we can submit that to RIDE and we could start seeing reimbursements come in early. And it's just kind of a way to lighten the burden as the bands go into play over these next 6 years. Reimbursements from RIDE will already start to trickle in to help pay down the debt service, so that it kind of gives us a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to overall costs when it comes to the schools on the town. I'm drawing a blank on, so I'm gonna have to ask you for help, Mr. Pedraza, on this one.
So in terms of some of the next steps, the public engagement session on April 9th is, while it's open to everyone, it will take place here at South Kingstown High School. It is open to all, however, it is focused mainly on abutters. Those abutters, the mailings have gone out. I learned yesterday. Those have already gone out to make sure that there's ample notice and that those notices were mailed. But that's an important public engagement session, as it is something that is required for, I believe, the planning board, as making sure that we proceed and stay on schedule. And then it's just because of Mr. Mahoney's last meeting, that the next director, facilities director, when one is found and they are brought on board, will join that meeting. However, because she was late, needed to be punished with a new co-chair of the building subcommittee. And so I'm very pleased to report that I will be serving as the co-chair of the building committee moving forward. Terry Lynch should run and hide, but that's a whole other conversation. That's what jumps to mind.
There was also a discussion. So last night, if you didn't watch the town council meeting, there was discussion about concerns around tariffs when it comes to steel and what that would do to the cost of the project. So two very important points is there has been a request to investigate timber in place of steel. What that would do, there are two very drastic results if we went down that route, is it would completely change the project. So the timeline on the project would be completely skewed. And there aren't a lot of sources for timber. Most of those sources are in Canada. And so that is something that is being explored for tariffs also. So there would kind of be you're looking at the pros and cons. There aren't too many pros when it comes to exploring that. So that the town council pretty quickly put a pin in that and was like, yeah, that's not something that we should even be looking at. It would be more expensive. So it hit all three, like, no, no, no. So that was clear direction that was given to Gilbane and Leftfield and myself that let's say, we'll be sticking with steel. Gilbane is doing a great job at looking at American source steel so that we don't have to navigate the tariff world. However, so is in every other building committee and OPM. But something that he made very clear, I asked him to make it very clear that if we do have to buy from another country and it is tariffed and it will have a 20% increase, it is only for the steel. It's not for the full project number. And I think there's at some point there, I don't know how the confusion got there, but the concern was that there'd be a 20% increase to the $150 million and that it would only be for the steel, which is only, he broke it down in multiple ways, and it would be an increase, but it would be a very small increase in the grand scope of the project. But they are also already finding with other projects that they're working on right now that even including the factors for the tariffs, that the costs are actually coming in under what they estimated in the first place, because we did a good job of estimating conservatively. So that put the town council very much at ease last night, which was great. Gilbane did a great job kind of stepping in and supporting Leftfield. I think that was it. Again, as Mr. Pedraza said, the community forum, all are welcome, but it is specific to the site plan and it is specific to the abutters. It's not necessarily to go in and look at the grand design of the plan. That will come as we move further through our current phase of design development. And at some point in April, I am hopeful that we will have the full project team here to do a thorough presentation to the school committee with where we are today. And that would include Gilbane, Leftfield, Studio Jade, and Slam Collaborative as well. So I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions for me? I'm better with questions.
Did you want that, that presentation you just mentioned, you want that in the next meeting? Or no?
Not the next meeting. I would say the end of April would probably be better shoot for, but I'll confirm with the project team.
Understood.
Thank you.
I just have a question. Do you think it would be advisable to have a special meeting just for that so that we don't end up, here at the wee hours?
I think that's a great question for our committee leadership as far as when they're sorting out the agendas for the next couple meetings. Maybe if you're looking at it and saying, we have too much going on, let's see if we can pull a special meeting. Or if you're looking at, I think guidance from leadership would dictate that. I'm happy to do either.
Well, certainly Carol and I will take a look at that as far as, how that compares, because we don't want to be here until like 11 o'clock at night. So.
Thank you for the update. All right. If there's no more questions, I think we're at number 7.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.